Before she even hears your voice, she's already made a decision about you. Before your first word lands, before your achievements, before your charm or your money can even enter the picture, she's already judging, instinctively, unconsciously, whether you are a man worth noticing. Most men have no idea this is happening. They think attraction starts with confidence, with conversation, with clever words or flashy gestures. It doesn't. Attraction starts long before any of that. It starts with your energy, your presence, the way you occupy your own space. And here's the shocking truth. If your energy is chaotic, if your inner world is unsettled, no words, no charm, no amount of effort will make her interested. She will sense it immediately. The moment you enter a room, the moment you exist in her presence, her body is scanning for calm, stability, and strength. She's asking, without even realizing it, is this a man I can relax around, or will I have to manage him? And most men are failing this test without even knowing it. They are rushing, over-explaining, performing, trying too hard to impress, completely unaware that what really matters is what they carry inside them, long before words are spoken. Stay with me because in this video, I'm going to reveal the exact principles that make younger women notice an older man instinctively, even before he says a single word. These are truths most men have never heard, things that can change everything about the way you are perceived, the way she feels around you, and the way attraction works. By the end of this video, you will understand why presence, calm, and self-mastery outweigh charm, wealth, and words every single time. And you'll know how to embody it so naturally that attraction becomes effortless, undeniable, and magnetic. If you're ready to stop guessing and start commanding presence without saying a word, keep watching, because what you're about to learn will change everything. Before an older man ever speaks, before he explains who he is or what he's achieved, something far more important has already happened. A younger woman has already felt him. And that feeling is not romantic, not sexual, not even conscious at first. It is neurological. It is instinctive. It is her nervous system taking a silent measurement and asking one essential question: is this man settled within himself, or is he still negotiating his worth with the world? Most men don't understand this because they believe attraction begins with communication. They think it starts with the right words, the right story, the right display of intelligence or success. But attraction, especially for women, begins much earlier than language. It begins with presence, with regulation, with the emotional temperature a man brings into a space the moment he enters it. A younger woman notices whether you arrive internally rushed or internally grounded. She notices if your energy feels contained or scattered. She notices whether your attention is relaxed or hungry. And she notices this not because she's analyzing you, but because her body is responding to yours. Long before logic steps in, the body decides. You see, women are highly attuned to emotional states because, historically and biologically, they had to be. Safety was never optional. So the nervous system learned to read subtle cues: posture, pace, breath, stillness. Is this person predictable? Is he calm under pressure? Does he seem comfortable with himself, or is he performing a role he hopes will be accepted? This is why an older man who is still trying to impress often feels less attractive than a younger man who is emotionally settled. Age without inner stability offers no reassurance. Experience without integration creates tension, and tension is felt immediately. When a man walks into a room, his body tells a story before his mouth ever does. If his shoulders are tight, if his movements are abrupt, if his eyes are searching for approval, that story is one of inner unrest. And no amount of charm can override that signal. Because words can lie, the nervous system doesn't. A younger woman notices how you occupy space, not in a dominant way, but in a grounded way. Do you seem at home in your own body, or do you appear as if you're bracing for judgment? Do you move at your own pace, or do you adjust yourself constantly based on who's watching? This is where many men get confused. They mistake calm for passivity and intensity for confidence. But intensity often masks anxiety. Calm, on the other hand, comes from resolution. It comes from a man who has confronted himself, made peace with his limitations, and no longer needs external validation to feel whole. And here's the key psychological insight most people miss. Women don't respond to what you think about yourself. They respond to how settled you are in yourself. Confidence that needs to be seen is not confidence, it's negotiation, and negotiation creates imbalance. A regulated man does not rush connection. He does not over-explain. He does not fill silence because silence does not threaten him. Silence for him is neutral, even nourishing. And for a younger woman, being around a man who is not afraid of silence feels like finally being able to exhale, because so much of modern interaction is performative. Everyone is selling something. Everyone is trying to be interesting. So when a man shows up without that urgency, without that internal noise, it stands out immediately, not loudly, but deeply. She notices how you respond when nothing is happening, when there is no stimulation, when the conversation pauses. That's when your inner world becomes visible. Do you remain present or do you become restless? Do you stay grounded or do you scramble for control? This is why presence is more persuasive than charisma. Presence says, I am not trying to get anything from you. And that message is profoundly disarming. A younger woman may not consciously think, this man is emotionally regulated, but she will feel it as ease, as safety, as clarity. And those feelings are the foundation of attraction, whether people admit it or not. What many older men fail to realize is that trying to leverage age, wisdom, or status actually works against them if it's driven by insecurity. The moment you need your age to mean something, it loses its power. True maturity is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It reveals itself in restraint. Restraint is deeply attractive because it signals choice. It says, I could react, but I don't need to. And needlessness is magnetic. A younger woman notices if you can hold desire without urgency, if you can be interested without being invasive, if you can appreciate without trying to possess. These are not verbal qualities, they are energetic ones. And this brings us to a deeper philosophical point. Attraction is not about acquiring another person. It is about resonance, about two nervous systems either calming each other or activating each other. A man who has learned to calm himself becomes someone others feel calm around. And in a world addicted to stimulation, calm feels rare, almost luxurious. This is why self-mastery precedes connection. You cannot create safety for another person if you are at war with yourself. You cannot offer stability if you are still seeking it externally. And younger women, often overwhelmed by emotional unpredictability in their own generation, are especially sensitive to this difference. So when an older man asks why he isn't being noticed, the question is rarely about attraction techniques. It's about inner order, about whether his life feels aligned or merely busy, about whether he's made peace with his solitude or is desperately trying to escape it. Because the man who enjoys his own company brings a different quality into the room. He doesn't lean, he doesn't pull, he simply stands. And that steadiness is felt immediately. Before you speak, before you explain, before you try to connect, ask yourself this: am I settled enough to be felt as safe? Because attraction doesn't begin with what you say, it begins with what you are. And the moment you understand that, you stop trying to be impressive and start becoming grounded. That shift alone changes everything. Most men are taught to believe that confidence is something you project outward, that it's about volume, certainty, dominance, or having the right answers. They think confidence is what you show. But what younger women respond to isn't confidence as a performance, it's calm as a state of being. And those two things are not the same. Confidence, when it is forced, is loud. It needs to be seen. It needs feedback. It needs reassurance. Calm does not. Calm exists whether it is noticed or not. And that difference matters more than most men realize. A younger woman notices immediately whether a man's energy is settled or charged. Charged energy feels restless. It feels like something is being pushed. Settled energy feels spacious. It feels like nothing is being demanded. And psychologically, humans move toward what feels spacious and away from what feels pressuring. Calm is attractive because it signals emotional safety, not safety in the sense of weakness or passivity, but safety in the sense of predictability. A calm man is not reactive. He does not escalate emotionally. He does not collapse under uncertainty. He remains steady when things don't go his way, and steadiness is deeply reassuring. In contrast, performative confidence often masks anxiety. It shows up as over-talking, over-explaining, over-asserting. The man may appear strong on the surface, but underneath there is urgency, a need to be acknowledged, a need to be validated. Younger women sense this quickly, even if they can't articulate it. Their nervous system reads it as instability. This is why calm outperforms charisma. Charisma excites, calm stabilizes. Excitement is easy to create and easy to lose. Stability builds slowly, but once it's felt, it's difficult to replace. A younger woman is not asking, consciously or unconsciously, is this man impressive? She's asking, can I relax around him? That question determines everything because relaxation allows curiosity. Curiosity allows connection, and connection allows attraction to deepen. Calm also communicates self-trust. A man who is calm is a man who trusts himself to handle outcomes he cannot control. He doesn't rush to secure certainty. He doesn't panic in ambiguity. He allows things to unfold without forcing them. That level of internal trust is rare, and rarity creates value. This is why men who slow down often become more attractive without trying. Their words land differently. Their silences feel intentional rather than awkward. Their attention feels chosen rather than desperate. Calm changes the entire texture of interaction. Younger women, especially in a fast-paced, overstimulated world, are constantly navigating noise, digital noise, emotional noise, social noise. When they encounter a man whose inner world is quiet, it feels like relief, like stepping out of chaos into something grounded. And here's the important distinction. Calm is not indifference. It is not emotional distance. It is presence without agitation. A calm man can feel deeply without becoming overwhelmed. He can care without clinging. He can desire without losing self-control. This is where maturity actually shows itself, not in how intensely you feel, but in how well you regulate those feelings. Emotional regulation is not suppression, it's integration. It's the ability to experience emotion without being ruled by it. When a man lacks this regulation, his confidence fluctuates. He feels strong when things go well and threatened when they don't. That instability creates emotional whiplash for anyone around him. Younger women, in particular, are quick to step away from that dynamic because it feels unsafe, even if it looks exciting at first. Calm, on the other hand, is consistent. It does not spike dramatically and it does not crash, and consistency builds trust faster than intensity ever could. This is why a man who speaks slowly, listens fully, and responds thoughtfully often commands more attention than a man who dominates the conversation. He is not trying to win the interaction, he is present in it, and presence is felt as respect. A calm man does not need to assert boundaries aggressively. His boundaries are felt. He does not need to prove masculinity. It is evident in his restraint, in his ability to pause, in his comfort with not being liked by everyone. Younger women notice how a man handles frustration. Does he become sharp, defensive, dismissive, or does he remain composed, curious, and self-contained? That moment reveals far more than any confident statement ever could. Philosophically, calm reflects alignment. When a man's values, actions, and identity are coherent, there is less inner conflict, less friction, and less friction produces calm. This is why calm cannot be faked for long. It is the byproduct of inner order. Men who chase confidence techniques often miss this. They focus on posture, voice, dominance, strategies. But without inner alignment, these techniques become costumes, and eventually the nervous system exposes the truth. Calm is what remains when you are no longer trying to be someone else, when you accept your pace, your path, your preferences, when you stop competing for validation and start living from self-respect. And here's the paradox most men struggle with. The less you need attraction, the more attractive you become, because need creates tension, and tension repels. Calm comes from sufficiency, from knowing that your life is already full, with or without approval. A younger woman feels this immediately. She feels whether you are inviting her into a full life or asking her to complete an empty one. Only one of those feels safe. So if you want to be more attractive, stop asking how to appear confident and start asking how to become calm. Where in your life are you rushing? Where are you forcing outcomes? Where are you avoiding stillness? Because calm is not built in social interactions. It is built in solitude, in discipline, in emotional honesty, in learning to sit with discomfort without trying to escape it. When you cultivate calm, you no longer chase moments, you allow them. And people respond differently to someone who is not in a hurry. In the end, confidence tries to convince, calm does not need to. Calm simply exists and others adjust to it. And when a younger woman feels that calm in your presence, she doesn't just notice you, she trusts you. And trust is where real attraction begins. So slow down, regulate yourself. Let calm become your baseline, not your strategy, because the strongest energy in the room is never the loudest one, it's the most grounded. Most men never realize how much their neediness sabotages attraction. They think charm, intelligence, or status is enough to hold someone's attention. They think showing desire proves worth. But in reality, scarcity repels and self-mastery attracts. Scarcity is obvious, it's loud. It comes from the subtle ways a man leans for validation, seeks approval, or reacts when he feels ignored. It is the hidden signal that says, consciously or unconsciously, I need you to complete me. Women feel it instantly, even before words are spoken. Self-mastery, on the other hand, carries quiet power. It is not about control or dominance. It is about sovereignty over your own emotions, choices, and life. A man who has cultivated self-mastery does not overreact when he doesn't get immediate attention. He does not chase approval because he understands that his presence has value independent of anyone else's response. That is magnetic. That is rare. And that is exactly what younger women notice long before a conversation begins. Scarcity shows up in countless small ways, in the micro-anxieties that leak through posture, in rushed gestures, in compulsive explanation or overcompensation. It is the subtle pushiness, the faint tremor of expectation that signals, I am hoping you will choose me. And here is the truth. Choice is never compelling when it is demanded. Attraction comes from freedom, from the sense that someone is not tethered to your reaction. When a man appears hungry for admiration, it feels heavy, it feels exhausting, it drains energy. Instead of adding to it, self-mastery flips this dynamic completely. It says, I am whole whether you respond or not. I am complete whether you approve or not. I do not need you to validate my presence. And that declaration, unspoken yet deeply felt, creates polarity. It creates a field in which a younger woman can relax, explore, and feel intrigue instead of pressure. That polarity is not manufactured, it is a natural byproduct of inner order and control. Most men confuse desire with neediness. They think the more they want someone, the more attractive they appear, but true attraction grows when desire is tempered by composure. A man can want without needing, he can pursue without chasing, he can appreciate without clinging. That is the essence of self-mastery. That is the quality that younger women notice in subtle but undeniable ways. They notice how a man handles his emotions when she is distant, when attention is delayed, when interaction is not immediate. Do you implode or do you remain steady? That moment reveals far more than any words ever could. Scarcity is also psychological. It comes from unresolved dependency, from believing that someone else's attention is required to feel worthy. It can be as simple as constantly checking messages, over-analyzing responses, or feeling slighted when admiration isn't immediate. These behaviors are transparent to anyone with emotional awareness. Women in particular pick up on these micro signals because they are sensitive to emotional resonance. They feel whether a man's energy is grounded or tethered to their reactions. That feeling determines whether the interaction is attractive or repelling. Self-mastery, by contrast, signals independence. It signals that a man is the author of his own life, that he does not outsource his emotional balance to external validation, that independence communicates strength, security, reliability. It creates a field of calm authority. It allows a younger woman to experience attraction without fear, without need, without obligation. And that is profound because human attraction is not simply about chemistry, it is about energy. It is about the interplay of stability and responsiveness, freedom and attention. Philosophically, scarcity is the shadow of insecurity. It always betrays itself because it requires constant maintenance, constant monitoring, constant worry about perception. Self-mastery, on the other hand, is a reflection of integration. It is the result of a man who has confronted his fears, resolved his inner conflicts, and aligned his actions with his values. When a man acts from this space, he does not need to perform. His presence is persuasive without effort, magnetic without force. The paradox is simple. The less you need to be chosen, the more likely you are to be chosen. The less you grasp, the more people are drawn to your steadiness. Neediness contracts space. It signals pressure. Self-mastery expands space. It signals freedom. And human psychology, female or male, is drawn toward freedom, not tension. Younger women, in particular, sense this. They sense the difference between a man who's trying to acquire them and a man who has already acquired himself. That difference is felt in seconds, sometimes before a word is spoken. Self-mastery also includes emotional discipline. It is the ability to desire without desperation, to connect without overextension, to engage without forcing. It is the equilibrium between presence and restraint. A man who can embody this principle naturally holds attention. He does not need to explain, defend, or justify himself. His energy communicates his worth. That is why older men who have cultivated self-mastery are often more attractive than younger men who try to compensate with charm or material success, because energy is more persuasive than appearance. Scarcity can be seductive in brief moments. Urgency can create tension that feels exciting, but it is fleeting. It burns out quickly. Self-mastery, on the other hand, sustains attraction over time. It is the difference between infatuation and magnetic connection. It is the difference between desire that burns and desire that grows. Younger women sense this whether consciously or not. They feel the difference in the way a man moves, the way he speaks, the way he inhabits his own life without relying on their reaction for validation. Self-mastery is also deeply aligned with autonomy. A man who masters himself is not beholden to approval. He is not swayed by attention or rejection. He can desire freely without constructing dependency. This creates a field of respect, intrigue, and attraction that is impossible to manufacture. Scarcity, no matter how clever or strategic, cannot achieve the same effect. It is transient, reactive, and ultimately exhausting. To cultivate self-mastery is to take responsibility for your own inner state, to regulate your emotions, to build your own sense of worth, to create an internal foundation that no external circumstance can shake. That foundation communicates stability, security, and reliability, qualities that are immediately felt by a younger woman. And that foundation allows connection to grow organically rather than being forced or contrived. In conclusion, scarcity repels and self-mastery attracts because human energy responds to authenticity and stability. The more a man relies on external validation, the more he signals need and the more he unconsciously repels. The more he embodies self-mastery, the more he signals sufficiency and the more he naturally attracts. Younger women notice this instinctively before a word is spoken, before conscious thought arrives, before evaluation begins. Attraction begins in energy, it begins in self-mastery. And when a man understands this, he no longer chases, he no longer grasps, he no longer performs. He simply becomes the grounded presence that draws others in naturally. The choice is simple: live in scarcity or cultivate mastery. One repels, the other magnetizes. The moment you decide to master yourself, everything changes, not because you try to be noticed, but because you no longer need to be. Most men misunderstand what true masculinity means. They think masculinity is loud, assertive, or even controlling. They think it's about domination, about directing the flow of interaction, about proving strength in ways that are visible. But younger women sense differently. They sense the energy beneath the surface. They feel whether a man is masculine, not by his words or achievements, but by his ability to contain his own emotions. Emotional containment is the quiet, invisible architecture of true masculinity, and it is far more persuasive than any outward display of power. Containment is not suppression. It is not bottling feelings until they explode. It is integration. It is the ability to experience emotion fully, to recognize it, and to process it without spilling it onto someone else. It is the difference between feeling frustrated and becoming reactive, between feeling disappointed and lashing out, between feeling desire and pressuring it onto another person. A man who can contain himself in this way is inherently attractive because he signals stability, reliability, and self-control. He does not need constant reassurance or external validation. He does not rely on anyone else to calm or regulate him. Younger women notice this immediately, even if they cannot put it into words. When a man maintains composure, they feel safety. They feel that they can show up without being forced to manage his emotions. They feel that they can be themselves without tension. That sense of relief is magnetic, because most interactions they experience in the world are the opposite: chaotic, reactive, and emotionally unpredictable. A man who contains himself is like a calm center in the middle of a storm, and humans instinctively gravitate toward calm. Emotional containment also defines the way a man handles silence, uncertainty, and discomfort. He does not panic when the conversation pauses. He does not scramble when the interaction is not progressing on his timeline. He is able to simply observe, to reflect, to allow space for things to unfold naturally. That ability creates a kind of energy that younger women feel immediately. It communicates confidence without performance, stability without force, and security without pressure. The contrast between containment and reactivity is subtle, but it is powerful. Reactivity creates tension, unpredictability, and emotional labor for everyone around it. Containment creates ease, safety, and curiosity. Women, especially younger women, unconsciously detect this tension. They feel whether the interaction is draining or energizing. They feel whether they must step into the role of managing the man's emotions, or whether they can simply engage without extra effort. The difference determines attraction more than words, looks, or status ever could. Containment also shapes desire. A man who can contain himself does not chase. He can experience desire without clinging. He can appreciate someone without needing to possess them. This is where most men fail. They believe attraction is about intensity, about passion, about showing how much they want something, but unchecked intensity becomes pressure. Uncontained desire becomes coercion. Contained desire, on the other hand, communicates choice. It signals that he can want freely without creating obligation. It signals that he is whole on his own, and that the relationship or interaction is an addition, not a lifeline. This kind of emotional sovereignty is rare, and rarity creates magnetic attraction. A younger woman is not drawn to what is common, to what she has seen 100 times before. She is drawn to what feels rare, steady, and grounded. And emotional containment is rare because most men never learn it. They are raised to express, to react, to assert themselves externally, often at the expense of their inner equilibrium. Learning to contain requires self-awareness, discipline, and courage. It requires confronting uncomfortable feelings instead of fleeing from them. It requires practicing presence in moments when control seems impossible. Masculinity expressed through containment also communicates trustworthiness. A man who can hold his emotions does not manipulate others to soothe himself. He does not become jealous, possessive, or reactive under stress. He is able to make decisions from a grounded state rather than a fearful one. And when a younger woman senses that a man can make decisions without being hijacked by emotion, she unconsciously experiences a profound sense of safety and respect. She knows she can rely on him, not because he claims reliability, but because his energy proves it. Philosophically, emotional containment is the embodiment of internal authority. It is the recognition that your inner world is yours to govern, that no external circumstance, no slight, no perceived rejection can dismantle your equilibrium. That mastery over oneself is the truest form of power, and this is precisely what younger women detect. It is not about what you say, how much you earn, or what car you drive. It is about the authority you hold over your own state, the consistency you maintain, and the calm certainty that radiates outward from that integration. Containment also impacts communication in subtle ways. A man who has mastered his emotions speaks less impulsively, listens more deeply, and responds with thoughtfulness. He does not feel compelled to interrupt, dominate, or persuade. His words carry weight because they are not born out of urgency or insecurity. They emerge from presence, clarity, and grounded choice. That is inherently attractive. It is the opposite of neediness and scarcity. It is self-mastery applied to interaction, and it transforms relationships into spaces of ease rather than tension. Women are particularly sensitive to these dynamics because they are often socialized to maintain relational harmony. They are attuned to energy, tone, and emotional consistency. They sense immediately when a man's emotions are contained versus when they are projected onto others. Emotional containment allows a younger woman to engage freely without the unconscious burden of managing another person's instability. It allows her curiosity, attention, and natural attraction to arise organically rather than being manipulated or forced. Containment is also a reflection of maturity. Many men equate masculinity with dominance, and they mistake emotional reactivity for strength. But true strength is not in being uncontrollable, it is in choosing how you respond. It is in the ability to feel fully without causing disruption. It is in the capacity to maintain presence when faced with unpredictability. And that, more than any superficial trait, signals true masculine power. A man who embodies containment allows polarity to exist naturally. He can show interest without creating neediness. He can provide guidance without imposing. He can desire without overstepping. This balance creates attraction that is deep, sustainable, and felt before words, before conscious thought, and before evaluation. Younger women sense it because energy communicates faster than language. Presence communicates faster than explanation. Integration communicates faster than performance. Ultimately, emotional containment is not something you do for someone else. It is something you cultivate for yourself. It is a practice of self-mastery, presence, and discipline. It is an internal architecture that holds your identity, your emotions, and your choices steady, no matter external circumstances. And the moment you achieve it, you notice the world responds differently. Interactions are easier, relationships are clearer, attention is given naturally rather than extracted. Attraction is a byproduct of your own alignment, not a performance or strategy. So, if you want to understand why younger women are drawn to certain men, look beyond words, status, or charm, look at emotional containment, look at the ability to feel without being overwhelmed, look at the capacity to desire without needing. When a man masters his inner world, his energy communicates safety, reliability, and magnetic presence. That is the essence of masculinity that attracts. That is the invisible force that draws others in naturally, and it begins not with effort but with mastery over oneself. The choice is clear: react to the world and let your emotions control you, or cultivate containment and let your presence speak louder than any words. When you choose containment, you become the kind of man that is felt, trusted, and deeply respected long before a conversation even begins. That is the power of true masculinity. And that is the lesson that will transform not only how younger women see you, but how the world responds to the energy you carry. Most men underestimate the subtle power of presence. They believe attraction is a result of words, charm, or achievements. They think they must convince, impress, or perform. But younger women sense something far deeper long before language begins. Presence creates polarity. It communicates without speaking. It draws attention without effort. It signals value, confidence, and self-possession in a way that words and actions alone never can. Presence is energy. It is alignment. It is the quiet force that organizes attention around you naturally. Polarity exists in energy. It is not about control, manipulation, or performance. It is the magnetic tension between two distinct forces. A man who has cultivated presence embodies fullness. He is complete in himself. He does not lean, chase, or over-explain. He does not attempt to pull someone into his orbit because he already exists fully within it. And that fullness, that energetic stability, is what younger women notice first. It is subtle, but it is irresistible. Men often make the mistake of believing that attention is earned by effort. They think that attraction requires showing more, saying more, or doing more. But true presence does not demand attention. It allows it to arrive naturally. When a man is grounded, calm, and self-contained, the space around him becomes magnetic. People are drawn into it, not because of what he says, but because of the energy he radiates. That is the distinction between trying to be noticed and being naturally noticed. Presence is built on consistency. It is not occasional bursts of confidence or charisma. It is the continuous state of alignment between thought, emotion, and action. A man with presence is predictable in his composure, but unpredictable in the excitement he brings through his authenticity. He is not chaotic, but he is alive. That energy creates intrigue because it feels rare and real, unlike the performative behaviors most men default to. Younger women detect presence instinctively. They notice the calm authority in how a man moves through space, even before a conversation begins. They notice the rhythm of his interactions. Does he pause, allowing moments to breathe? Does he engage fully without rushing? Does he respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively? These subtle cues communicate that he is anchored in himself, that he is not grasping for approval, and that he is not operating from scarcity. Polarity is generated when a man exists fully in his own energy while allowing space for another person's energy to exist without control or interference. A man who has presence can express interest without neediness. He can engage without intrusion. He can desire without coercion. That balance is magnetic because it signals choice. It says, I am whole and I choose to be here not because I need you, but because I want to. That message is felt instinctively, and it is far more persuasive than any words, gift, or strategy. Men often confuse intensity with presence. They think that showing passion, urgency, or forceful desire will create attraction. In reality, intensity without stability often produces tension and pressure. It signals need. Presence, on the other hand, is deliberate, calm, and composed. It communicates strength without effort. It communicates desire without desperation. It allows polarity to exist naturally, and in that space, attraction grows organically. Full presence requires self-mastery. It demands that a man be comfortable with himself in solitude, that he can exist without constant external validation, that he can regulate his emotions, hold his attention, and operate without frantic reassurance. Without this foundation, presence becomes performance. It becomes artificial. But when a man cultivates self-containment and inner alignment, presence flows naturally, and people, especially younger, men, sense it immediately. The world is full of men who talk, but few who are felt. Words are replaceable, energy is memorable. Presence amplifies everything a man does. His words land differently, his gestures carry weight, his silence communicates confidence. And that is why presence is more compelling than any skill or tactic. Younger women do not just notice presence, they are drawn into it unconsciously. They sense that interacting with a man of presence requires no effort, no management, no correcting of emotional imbalance. They feel safe, intrigued, and engaged all at once. Polarity also relies on boundaries. Presence cannot exist without it. A man with presence knows what he will accept, what he will tolerate, and what aligns with his values. He communicates these boundaries not aggressively but naturally through his energy. Boundaries create contrast, they create tension, they create intrigue. They demonstrate that he is fully himself and that his energy is not up for negotiation. That contrast is what younger women sense as magnetic. Presence is also a practice of restraint. It is the ability to pause before reacting, to respond rather than react, to allow curiosity to flourish rather than rushing for results. The man who practices this restraint demonstrates confidence in a quiet, undeniable way. He shows that he trusts himself to handle outcomes. He shows that he can exist fully without needing external affirmation, and that calm confidence is the energy that generates polarity. Men who try too hard destroy the very thing they seek. They overcompensate, overexplain, overperform. They confuse effort with influence. Presence, however, is effortless. It does not require constant proof. It does not hinge on external approval. It is the quiet yet powerful assertion of a man who is centered, who is complete, and who operates from inner sufficiency. That energy speaks before words, resonates in silence, and creates connection without coercion. Ultimately, presence is the combination of grounding, self-mastery, and authentic expression. It is the culmination of calm, emotional regulation, and the ability to exist fully without needing to impress. It is the magnetic field that attracts attention, interest, and intrigue before a single word is spoken. Presence generates polarity because it signals choice, freedom, and alignment. It draws others in naturally, not because it forces attraction, but because it radiates authenticity, stability, and completeness. A younger woman notices this instantly. She feels it in the room, in the way he moves, in the way he interacts. She senses whether his energy adds or drains, whether it invites curiosity or imposes expectation. She feels the difference between a man who performs to be seen and a man whose presence is undeniable simply because he is fully himself. That feeling is more powerful than charm, status, or even age. It is subtle yet unforgettable. So, presence is the final expression of all the principles that create deep attraction. It is the stage where calm meets self-mastery, where emotional containment meets energy alignment, and where polarity is naturally created. A man who cultivates presence does chase, does not lean, does not over-explain. He allows, he exists, he chooses, and in doing so, he becomes magnetic without effort, compelling without performance, and unforgettable without trying. The choice is yours. Live in reaction and need, or cultivate presence and magnetic energy. One repels, the other draws. One exhausts, the other sustains. One fades, the other endures. True presence is not learned in theory, it embodied in life, practiced in solitude, and radiated naturally. When you master presence, you no longer compete for attention, you simply are. And in that being, you are felt, remembered, and chosen long before a single word ever escapes your lips.